So I just want you guys to just get comfortable and make sure that you are going to ask questions. I don't really like feeling like I'm speaking to myself. I love actually interacting with you guys and getting to know how you guys are feeling, how you guys are thinking. And I heard that you guys are getting your results this Saturday and you guys are anxious. So you attended this session, which is very good. That means you take yourself seriously and you take your academics seriously. So I hope that we're going to have like a productive and effective session. I'm going to close my camera and then start sharing my screen. Zalia, please confirm if you can see my screen.
Yes, I can.
Okay, so if there are any questions, Zalia, can you please just assist with hands, because when I'm sharing my screen, I'm unable to see the hands.
All right.
Okay, so today's session is called More Than a Conqueror. And I love this because it's basically defining what a conqueror is, right? You know what a conqueror is. And usually when we are faced with obstacles, we think that the giant is bigger than us. Meanwhile, we are bigger than that giant. And today we're basically going to dissect what more than a conqueror means. So the definition, it says that a person who conquers a place or people, right? And the example that I made here is that the person reading this will conquer the APC board exam. So I love the conqueror because it means that you are able to overcome anything that challenges you. And in this case, you're going to conquer the APC exam, be it whether you're doing APC, ISC, or CTA. This message is going to be for you, right? My slides are not in depth, so we're going to have a brief session because I mentioned that I don't want to speak alone. So this is the time when you're going to get to just absorb everything that I'm saying, but also focus on questions that you might have for me so we can get into it. Right. And on Saturday or whichever day you're going to get results, you are going to get your script back. And your script will either be written competent or borderline competent. You know the rating, right? But in simple terms, either they're going to tell you whether you passed or whether you failed. And if you failed, right, you're going to get to ask yourself, what is the next step, right? Because many a times we think that it is the end of the world and we don't have any other option, and that's when the imposter syndrome kicks in. And I think in the previous session I mentioned that when you fail, you end up doubting your own abilities. You end up doubting your own technical knowledge because you think that maybe you are the problem. Because in the APC background, you're working with other people in your group, and it becomes challenging if people in your group are passing and you are the one that is failing. That's when you get to question yourself, because I did that, right? When I failed, I questioned myself as to, is it me? Am I the drama? Am I the one that's not actually getting it? I even thought that I was slow at some point, but then I'm like, you know what? Others are quicker to grasp it. But because I'm a perfectionist and because like I tend to take my time with studying, having to balance school and work at the same time was really a struggle for me. Hence why I did fail the whole year and only passed the supplementary, which is after the qualifying assessment. But I had to ask myself, since I failed, what is going to be the next step? Right? Am I going to quit or am I going to keep on going? And that is a question that only you can focus on, because at the end of the day, it's either you're going to let the failure define you or you're going to let the failure actually keep you down. Because if you're going to let the failure keep you down, then that means you're not going to, progress in life. It's either you're going to let the failure actually define your purpose and also redefine how you see it, right? Because the title of the message today is You Are More Than a Conqueror. And how you are going to progress after this is solely based on you. But the next step in the APC process is actually going back to reflect on what actually went wrong and what is the reason why you did fail. So when you are doing an effective self-reflection, you need to look at both parties, because at the end of the day, as much as you are writing the exam, there's a 5-day period where you are actually doing research. And in the 5 days, normally when I speak to candidates, I always ask them, why do you think you failed? Why do you think you didn't do well? And they said, no, there's so many triggers that I didn't prepare for on the day, or maybe they didn't have enough time. But then I say, okay, let's take 3 steps back, right? Let's try to pinpoint what exactly happened when you were doing the 5 days research period, right? Because remember, in the 5 days, you need to do effective research and you need to know what you are researching. You need to know how it's going to help you in the assessment. And one of the things I like saying is that as much as you are working on your own, it always starts with group work, because on the day you get the pre-release information, you're going to read the case study, but then you're going to meet with your group to discuss those triggers that you've identified and reconcile. And also they're going to tell you what you missed, and you also going to tell your group members what you have discovered that they have missed, right? So when you're doing self review, you need to look at the perspective of yourself as well as the group. So the questions I like asking in the pre-release period is, what do you think went wrong when you were researching, right, the task, right? Because now they're going to ask you, what is the accounting treatment on the day? However, did you see that trigger when it was the pre-release period, right? You need to ask yourself, if I missed it, what made me miss it, right? What was my thought process? So that's when you're going to go back to the initial PDF document that you have read for the pre-release, and you're going to look at the notes that you have made, and you're going to reconcile, what actually did you miss? Why didn't I see that this is a trigger, when it was triggered during the 5 days? You need to see the second point. Now it says that, what did you miss or not research from the pre-release information, and why? That's when you're going to reconcile with what you read on the day and look at the PDF to look at your thought process. And the reason why I say that you need to check your notes is because it's going to allow you to look back from a reviewer's perspective to say, okay, this is a candidate. Let's see what this candidate was thinking, and was it in alignment to what was going to be asked on the day? That's when you're going to see that this is where you have a knowledge gap. This is where you did not think critically, and this is what you have missed, right? And I urge you to write everything down that you have missed and ask yourself, why did I miss this? Why didn't I see it in this way? But also, when you're looking at what you missed, you must also look at, if the group missed it as well, why didn't we see it? That's when you come together as a group and you discuss, okay, for this trigger specifically, why did we not see that this is actually something we need to do research on? Why didn't we think in a critical way? Why didn't we apply professional judgment? And those are the questions, well, the tough conversations you must have with your group members. And the third question you must ask yourself is, did you understand the trigger fully? Because many times you were very quick to do research before actually understanding what is it that they're actually asking me? What opinion do they want me to display, right? And what work do I need to perform in order to be a C candidate? And now the last question is, was the group discussion about this trigger effective, right? And if not, how will you address it as a group? So now you're gonna go back to the group discussions that you guys had and ask yourself, did we actually challenge ourselves when we were actually digesting this trigger and also breaking it down to each other? And that's when you're going to have that difficult conversation with your group members to say, okay, I see that this is the way we went in the pre-release information. However, on the day, it was a complete turnaround, right? A 360 turn, and we did not know what we were doing because we didn't get to the crux of the matter in the pre-release. That's when you're going to sit down with the group to ask, okay, is it effective to have a 5-hour discussion? Can we cap it to 2, where we're going to actually critically discuss certain things? That's when you need to focus on your approach as a group, right? And now when you covered that 5 days, we get to the exam day now. And the first thing you need to ask yourself is, was your response mostly coverage? And coverage mostly is basically saying that, was your response just too technical? Because you can cover the technical aspect. However, when you do not add depth, which is application, that's when you fall short. Because markers and the exam setters are not testing you on your ability to spit back knowledge and what is written in the standards and what is written in the ISAs and the IFRS and what is written in the tax legislation. They know what is written there because they can read it themselves. They are basically saying that we want to see what you are thinking, right? When we are giving you this case study, what is your opinion? What is your professional judgment? And that's why when you're writing APC, they do not address you as a trainee. They address you as a newly qualified chartered accountant because they're preparing you for that role. So whenever you are writing, remember that you are writing from a perspective of, I'm already a CA. So when I'm covering something, I can't just state IFRS 15 for revenue, this is what it states, right? Without actually applying that in the case study. I read that when we have vouchers, this is, the scenario, this is what I need to apply, right? Because now when they're testing you on application, they want to see What do you think about this? Because when you're auditing in real life, you're going to have disputes with the client, and you need to tell the client, no, the standard says A, B, and C. Therefore, you did not apply yourself, right? You were not consistent in the application of this IFRS. Therefore, I need to raise a finding, I need to raise an issue, right? But so now when you're having that dispute with a client, you can't just be like, this is what the standard says. No, you need to state that when I looked at your financial statements, I saw that this is an issue. It did not comply with the certain paragraph in the specific ISA. Therefore, this is my recommendation. So how are you going to recommend solutions to the client if you do not understand the issue itself and you didn't apply yourself? That is basically how you need to answer an APC exam. And then the third one is what did you miss from the expectation table? Meaning that this is when you're going to look at the memorandum. Now, when you get your scripts, they're going to mark you in depth, right? They're going to tell you that this is the standard answer and this is what you have missed. So now you need to go back and say, why did I miss this when answering? And you need to understand where your knowledge gap is in terms of technical aspect and where your knowledge gap is in terms of answering aspect. Because remember, I said APC, it's about the technical knowledge, and 80% of the time, it's about applying yourself in a professional manner. And the second last one says that, did I understand the question in the information of the day? And usually when we're running out of time, we tend to answer what we think they're asking us instead of what they're actually asking us. And we tend to misinterpret what the exam setter was actually saying, right? And that's when we end up in a not competent or limited competence space. So you need to bring yourself towards a point where you actually understand, what does the exam setter want from me? Right? What opinion do they want from me? And also, what additional things can I add to my answer for them to see that I'm actually bringing solutions instead of bringing problems, right? And then the last one is, did I conclude effectively in my response? Because many a time we focus on the introduction of the email, we focus on the body, which is what is required. However, we do not give our conclusion as to say, in conclusion, I suggest that we invest in this project, or we don't, right? Because you can't really give an opinion if you do not conclude on the matter. And I feel like that is very important. That's why when you are answering a question, you need to have a checklist as to say, I did have an introduction, I did answer the triggers, which is the body, and then I did conclude on the matter. Because if I do not conclude, that means the reviewer of my script is going to be left hanging and they don't know where I stand. And if I feel like I stand on the fence with your response, I won't be able to mark you as a competent candidate because I do not know your opinion. You did not conclude on the matter. So I do not know if you are competent enough to actually be rated at that level. But that is basically the holistic way of looking at your script review, because I know that they're going to give you in-depth review notes that you have to look at, but also go back and perform your self-reflection as well, because that's going to help you bridge the gap. And the thing that I want to leave you with is this quote that says, it's never too late to turn things around. You are the only obstacle, which is very true, because we tend to be hard on ourselves and we tend to say mean things to ourselves, right? Because at the end of the day, if you think about it, the only person that's stopping you from being competent is yourself. It's not your lecturers. It's not the team from Endynamo. It's not anybody else at work. It's not your boss. It is you, right? Because you determine how far you're willing to go. You determine how much work you're willing to put in, right? And now you need to look at the trajectory of whatever result you're going to get. If it's the failure, you need to actually ask yourself, like I mentioned in the beginning, that is this failure going to define me? And am I going to let it get me down, or am I going to overcome it, right? Which brings me to my next point. We discussed this in my previous session, but I just want to reiterate it, where this verse says there's beauty from ashes, right? And I love failure because you control what happens next. You have control over that, right? It's either you're going to let it birth your purpose, and you're going to let it, build your character, and you're gonna fight against it, or it's gonna ignite the fighting spirit in you, because now it's like, okay, I understand that I failed, but what am I gonna do about it, right? What am I gonna make sure that I rise above it? And I love saying that when you do something, do it once and do it right, so that you don't have any regrets later. So make sure that in the failure, you bask in it for like an hour, but get back up to say, I'm not going to let it define me. And the last point is it reminds you of the why, right? Because you just didn't wake up to say, I'm going to be a CA. There's a reason why you said you want to be a CA, right? And many of us are the first CAs in our families. Many of us are going to be the first hope in our communities. And we tend to forget that when we are drowning in failure, when we are drowning in work expectations and school expectations, right? So in order to understand the hunger that you have for this CA designation, you need to understand why you are doing it in the first place, because that will fuel you. If you have kids, think about your kids, right? Your family is going to be so proud of you, and they're going to say, yes, my mom is a CA, my dad is a CA, right? And if you, like I mentioned, if you're going to be the first CA in your family, do it for your bloodline, do it for the people after you, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether we have children or not, someone is looking at you and saying, this is my role model. So don't think that you are doing it only for yourself. No, people are watching you and they are rooting for you. So my question is, why are you not rooting for yourself, right? So you need to make sure that you're always kind to yourself. You need to make sure that you're always like you speak words of affirmation. Tell yourself that I am capable, I am competent, I am going to make it. You're right, nothing is wrong with me. I'm just experiencing maybe a bad assessment, but this is not who I am. This is not my performance. Your identity is not tied to your marks. That's one thing that you need to know. Your identity is not tied to your results, right? It's what you went through. It's not who you are. So never let it define you, right? And the last thing I would just want to state is that I do provide extra support on my YouTube channel. So if maybe you are struggling with your ethics considerations, I do have a video with regards to that. I do have a video for strategic considerations. I do have a video on how to tackle internal controls and all of that, right? So that's the name of the YouTube channel. So you can just look at that. And that is the end of my presentation. So this is when I will allow questions from the floor. You can ask me about anything you feel like you want to ask me. If maybe you do not want to unmute, then you can post your question in the chat and Zalia will be able to assist me. Zalia, over to you.
Thank you, Tavi, for that. Very insightful. So I will just give our audience a chance. So somebody, you're here, you have a question, please do come through. So maybe while we wait, Tavi, maybe so we have candidates here that are like you mentioned, and I think Nomfundo mentioned, they are here waiting for their results, Saturday. So the outcome could either be one, we have our fingers crossed and praying for the best, but maybe how did you manage the stress? So say between now, this week, and the results day, like how did you deal with it and just ensure that you are well by Saturday, because we need them to be well? How did you navigate?
I had that mentality of I can't stress about something I cannot change, because stressing about it is just going to give me anxiety and just cause a lot of things. I won't be able to sleep and I'll be tired and going to cause fatigue. So at this point, what's done is done. And like I mentioned, you need to hope for the best, right? So just look at it as a time to reflect, right? And as much as you do not know the outcome, there's no need to be anxious. There's no need to be worried, because you already know what to do when you get your script, right? All I can say is every day, just keep on reaffirming yourself, and just saying that, whatever happens, I know I'm going to bounce back. And if it's a good result, then that means I'm doing something good. I need to be consistent. If it's bad, then we need to have a game plan, right? So I think mentally, you need to fill yourself up with just positivity and don't stress about it. I think keep yourself busy. That's the only way you are going to get past these days. If it's work, keep yourself busy with work. If you want to take a jog or walk, then you can do that. But sitting on something and thinking that stressing about is going to change the outcome, it really will not, right? You did your best and let God do the rest. And so, yeah, That's my words of encouragement.
Okay, thank you, Ntabi. And the affirmations do help. I can attest to that. So we have 2 questions on the chat platform. So the first one is how can one deal with imposter syndrome? This gets to me the night before the test. So that's our first question. So maybe you can get through that and then I'll give you the second one.
Okay. So imposter syndrome doesn't come from anywhere, right? Imposter syndrome comes from us thinking that we are not worthy to be in the position that we are in. Number one, it's coming from us thinking that we have that fear of failure. And it's us also thinking that, you know, the results are tied to our identity. I had imposter syndrome because I'm one of the few people who failed the assessment 3, well, the qualifying assessment, and I had to write the supplementary exam in our group. And it creeped in knowing that some other people passed, that means I got it right and I failed, right? But I had to have trust in myself that I know my work. And one of the things that I'm saying to candidates is that if you're an IAC candidate or maybe you had exams before, SAICA did not make a mistake by saying you're competent in your IAC exam. That university didn't make a mistake when they were giving you your degree, right, or your CTA. So what makes you think that you are not capable of conquering APC, just like how you conquered IAC, just like how you conquered your degree and your honors, right? So that means that you're not here by mistake. Your hard work and your dedications are the ones that actually pulled you through to be where you are today, right? Counted a privilege that you qualified actually to even write APC for the board for the board course, right? As much as you haven't gotten your results and you don't know if you're qualifying for the APC exam itself, it is not a mistake that you are on this board course, right? So just make sure that, like I mentioned, go back to the words of affirmation. You are the only person that is standing in between you and your success. And that quote says, I will repeat it again, it's never too late to turn things around. You are the only obstacle. So ask yourself, what are you willing to do to change that imposter syndrome, right? Especially the day before an exam. Tell yourself that you're not here by mistake, right? Success is your portion, success is your destiny, and speak that over yourself. Thanks, Celia.
Thank you, Ntabi, for that. Surprise, you just let me know if all covered, or maybe if you have a follow-up question. Are we all good? Okay, all right. Thank you. So our next question is from Nomfundo. So Nomfundo is asking, how can I better my presence on the day? I go back to the IOD and beat myself for not picking up on so many things on the day.
Okay. Okay, let me start off by saying I am deeply offended that you guys would rather type questions than speak, but that's fine. I understand that you might be quite shy. But the advice I'll give you is also, I'm going to quote some advice that I posted on the YouTube channel, right? There's a video that I made that says how to approach the information of the day. I'm a person who works with structure. So what I would suggest is that have a structure on how you're going to approach everything. So for example, when you're reading the information of the day, read it with intention, number one. And when I say read it with intention, you need to read and write keywords and plan your answers. Planning your answers is very important because it's going to give you an overview of what you need to apply and how you need to approach that specific task. So when you're reading, you need to highlight, you need to write the keywords and structure your answer that, okay, I'm going to write this and this for the specific task. And when you are done, take 2 minutes, 2 minutes to calm down, say a little prayer, and then go back to read it again, have a second read. And that's when you are going to now, after reading that specific task again, you're going to answer. And when you are answering there, you need to ask yourself, is this going to help me be at that competent level? Is this what is actually being required of me? Because many times we tend to focus on writing essays upon essays. Meanwhile, we are not even competent in that specific task. But we think that the more we write, the more marks we are going to accumulate, which is not true, right? Less is more because you are attacking that specific trigger and what is required, right? So always make sure that you are working in a chronological sense where maybe you're starting with tasks that you know you're confident in and you're prepared for. And then for the ones that you're not actually quite sure of, leave them to the end so that you have more than enough time. But don't beat yourself up because you think that you could have done better. Ask yourself, what did I do wrong? If I wasted time on something I didn't know, it's not about what happened on the day. It's about how you prepared for it during the 5 days. And that's why I urge you to look at that effective self-reflection so that you can know where you went wrong from the first day you got the pre-release information. I don't know, Nomfundo, if I covered you.
Hi, Ntavi.
I know,
Yes, you
Fundo.
did. You did. So I think that the one thing I struggled with, so when you started, I actually posted a message there in terms of how you helped me through the 5 days, especially because I am an APC student, so I come from CMAM. So I
Mm.
did everything you advised, the task list, am I putting the introduction, conclusion, and everything was in my file. But on the day, as I'm reading, now I'm getting overwhelmed. As I'm making my notes, I'm like, yo, people are starting to write. And I know you also said that you're a very slow reader and you took more time compared to everyone else in one of your exams. But I think on the day that something creeped up on me and I was like, no, I don't have time for this. And I did waste a lot of time, especially with what you're saying. And now I'm like, I prepared on the day. No, before, but on the day now, I had my conclusion, but I did not include those in my tasks. So maybe it is something that I need to work on in prep for the final one and just get better at it. But thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing. One thing that I picked up was that when you said it, yeah, I felt something. You said that you were reading and then you started noticing that people are writing, right? Never do that because this is your own race, right? And one of the things that I mentioned, you are correct. The final APC assessment, the one we wrote in December, I started writing an hour, 30 minutes after we started the paper, and I became overwhelmed. But then in that moment, I had to tell myself that as much as people are starting to write, I need to understand what I'm reading. Because if I do not understand, then I will not be able to answer that task. So you need to set a time limit for yourself to say, okay, I'm dedicating so much time to reading, right? And also, when I'm done reading, I need to start writing. You need to be disciplined with yourself. And the reason why I said that do not look at what your neighbor is doing is because it gets overwhelming. Your neighbor can start writing, but it doesn't mean they're writing the right thing, right? So it's like life, right? So just make sure that you are only focusing on yourself, because when you're comparing yourself to your neighbor and you're comparing yourself to everybody else, it's really not going to work for you, right? Focus on your journey, focus on your paper, because at the end of the day, the neighbor that I was sitting next to probably may have made it or may have not have made it, right? But I do not know that because I didn't focus on everybody else. I focused on myself. So just make sure that you're not making that comparison. I had to understand that I'm a slow reader, but I didn't speak down on myself because I'm a slow reader. I just said, okay, other people read faster. That's fine. Let me work with what I have, which is slow reading. So I need to overcompensate. But actually, when I'm answering, I need to target what I'm actually being asked instead of decorating my answer and writing paragraphs upon paragraphs of nothing. Right. So you need to master your skill. You need to work with your weaknesses and see how you can work around it. I don't know if I answered you, Nomfundo.
Yes, you did. Thank you so much, Tavi.
It's a pleasure. Zalia, are there any other questions?
No, I'm just seeing a comment. Maybe, Nomfundo, maybe you can take this one. So Helen says that she decided to sit in front to mind her business. So there's no one she's able to look at. I think that's also a strategy. Yeah, so I'm not seeing any hands, any hands. You guys are going to scam Tavi. She won't visit us anymore. Someone, any hands, please come through. Let's engage.
I think there is a hand.
Oh, is there? I missed it. I missed it. Okay. I'm not seeing it on my side. You can come through. I'm not sure there. I'm not sure. I can't see the hand on my side.
Hi, Ntabiseng.
Hi.
I just wanna ask, how did you manage to write the qualifying exam and still prepare after PFMA audits? Because currently I feel so exhausted, also especially considering that PFMA audits are coming to an end. We've been working overtime. We have one assignment just before the August UCT board course qualifying exam, and I feel so tired. So I did binge watch all your videos, and I remember in one of the videos you said that towards the end of the year you kind of like took leave for a week just to reset. And the way that I feel so exhausted, I feel like maybe I should take like 3 days or 2 days off just to relax after the PFMA audits are done. I just want to find out, how did you manage that?
Okay, that's a very good question. Thank you so much for that. I think for one, the one thing I'm going to mention is set boundaries, right? When you are a student, you need to be selfish with yourself. And as much as you're going to have deadlines and you're going to have audit expectations, you need to make your needs known to your line managers. And one of the things that I did was speak to my manager to say that, listen, this year I'm a student. That means my commitments are going to look a bit different. And as much as I do have audit expectations, please understand that I will put myself first. So I need to show up at work and I also need to show up in my school. So I made sure that I am done in the 8 hours I'm working, that 8.2 hours I'm billing throughout the day, and I'm not going to work overtime. That meant that I sometimes have to skip lunch during the day if I had to focus on studying after hours, right? And the next thing I would suggest is do rest. Take that break, because if you do not rest, crash out is real and it's not cute. So there's a reason why I dedicated the last week of November to resting. It's because I needed to be sober-minded when I'm entering that exam room. I needed to make sure that I am relaxing. I'm not thinking about anything, because at the end of the day, as much as APC is technical and it wants a lot from me mentally, right? Psychologically, it also needs a lot. It needs my attention psychologically as well. So if I'm not okay, I will not be able to succeed in that APC paper, because psychologically I am not well. So you need to make sure that you are taking care of yourself. Mental health is really, really, really important in such a time, as well as your physical health, right? So many of you who are studying as well as working at the same time, I think you need to prioritize what is important to you and communicate those needs and be stern and firm. Because I feel like as much as you're going to say that, yes, I have audit deadlines, you also need to commit yourself to being strict about your boundaries, and you need to stick to them when you're having to speak to the manager. Come to some sort of an agreement if it means that you have to come into work earlier and leave earlier, right? So maybe you can come into work at 6:30 or 7 and leave at 3:30, just to get that break before your next class or before you want to study. Such arrangements can be made because managers were in your positions, right? And I mean, if you're willing to put in the work during your 9 to 5 job, then they shouldn't have a problem with you putting yourself first after hours. So I think being strict with your boundaries is very important. I don't know if I answered you, Vugala.
You did, thank you.
Okay, Zelia, the next question.
Okay, so we have a question from Helen in the chat box. So she's asking, what were you doing in the days before the PRI?
Oh, nothing APC related. I went to go watch a movie. I took a walk, went to the gym, took myself out on solo dates, like spoiled myself, go to a spa, do your nails. Anything that is not APC related, that's going to just make you laugh. That's just going to make you relax. And your body's not going to just, be stiff because of stress. And your mind is not going to just think about anything. So make sure that you're doing something that's not audit related. Like go to a park. If you have pets, go walk your dog, or maybe go buy a parrot. I don't know. But do something that's not APC related. I hope I
Okay,
answered
you
you,
were
Helen.
really you were practicing self-care there. Helen will
Yes.
just confirm. Okay. Okay, so Nomfundo, you can come through.
Yes, I think when Tabi was saying what she's saying, I'm like, hey, how, when? So, and Tabi, I'm saying that more especially, and I guess maybe that's where Helen is coming from, because she also went through the ABC CCC journey. So we're in the same class last year. So there are a lot of technical gaps. Let me speak for myself. Technical gaps that I have. And
Mhm.
during this period, after I've done my reflection, after I've gone back to my questions, now I am like, before the next PRI comes, there's something I need to do. I need to study, but what do I touch? What do I not touch? In this period, am I doing past papers or am I looking for ways to improve my cheat sheets? We'll include the self-care in there. There are days where we do the self-care, but if I were to study, what am I looking at? What am I not looking at? How am I approaching it?
Okay. So I'm just gonna quote something that I mentioned in the video. That's answering the question that you're asking me now. So the video is called ABC preparation: what to do before the exam day, right? And one of the things I mentioned is that if you identify a knowledge gap, a technical gap, that's when you need to go back to that specific section. However, you need to understand that as an examiner, I'm not going to test you on IFRS 15, the whole of IFRS 15, right? I'm going to test you on a specific section, right, of that specific standard. So one of the things you need to identify is that, for example, accounting, there is a set structure where the criteria of the standard, initial recognition and measurement, subsequent, and then presentation and disclosure. So if you want to I bridge that gap, I suggest when you're studying, you are going through that specific format, but don't study everything. There are major topics, for example, in accounting. At the top of my head, I'll think about IFRS 15, I'll think about IFRS 16 leases. And if maybe you want to brush up on PPE, which is sometimes it's heavily triggered. So you can brush up on something like that. And in finance, you can brush up on valuations and capital budgets, right? Because that's a major thing. And I would suggest brushing up on a topic that is going to take longer to grasp in 5 days. For example, if my knowledge on IFRS 16 is not brushed up, I'm going to take at least 1 day to try to understand what that standard is saying, right? So stuff like that you can avoid. And in that video, I basically explain each and every topic in each module that you can touch on, but you don't have to study it like completely. You don't have to sit down and actually say, okay, I need to know everything, because you never know what's going to be triggered and you can't guess what they're going to trigger, right? So you just need to cover yourself in that aspect. And cheat sheets as well, you need to look back and say, okay, what cheat sheets can actually help me? What cheat sheets can I have in my file? I had the audit process in my file, right? So that I can understand, okay, when we are dealing with the class of transaction, these are the assertions, these are the risks that can be associated with this assertion. So if they want procedures, then this is what I need to look out for. Those are general procedures for auditing, right? So I had to make sure that I bridge the gap. And if I'm writing a paper and I can see that we need to determine materiality and those qualitative considerations, chances are I forgot it because I'm under pressure. So if I have that in my file, just to look back and say, okay, this is what I need to consider when doing materiality, then this is what I need to include as well, right? And for valuations also, there's so many methods of valuations. I can't remember all of them. I need to have a set structure, right? It's just like how for WACC, there's so many WACC formulas. I need to know them off by heart. I already did that when I was doing CTA. I can't stress myself again for APC. My knowledge, my brain must actually capacitate other things that do not need formulas. So I need to make sure that I'm preparing cheat sheets according to what formulas I'm going to forget, right? So that is basically the advice I can give you. But in the days leading up to the pre-release information, right? Self-care is essential. It's very much essential, very much recommended. But also, you have so much time before your qualifying assessment. You can still study and also take care of yourself, right? But I suggest you strongly go back to that video. It's literally going to tell you everything that you need to do while you're waiting for the pre-release information. I hope I answered you, Nomfundo.
Yes, you did. Thank you so much. Sorry, Zelia, can I just ask a follow-up question? Maybe Ntabi can assist this with a hack for auditing tasks,
Yes.
because I feel like in all the assessments, that is the one task where I feel like I've prepped. It's in my file. I cover everything I need to research on. But on the day, in terms of how it is asked, I just get thrown away all the time. Is the video maybe that you have on that hack? If there is a hack, how do I then approach it? How do I prepare for it? Because maybe the issue is I might think I'm preparing sufficiently, but I am missing out some things.
Okay, there is actually a video for that. So my videos try to cover, a bit of everything. But there is a video for that. But there's only so many ways you can test auditing, really. And I think the crux of the matter is you having to understand the entire audit process. You need to understand the importance of understanding the entity. You need to understand the importance of pre-engagement. You need to understand the importance of line items and why they are significant. For example, you need to understand the industry, and many times we take advantage of the fact that we undermine industry research because we think that, okay, if I do industry research, it's not going to help me in any way. Meanwhile, it's going to help you in an auditing task. For example, the retail industry will not operate the same as a government institution because your materiality is going to be based on something that is driving the operations of that specific firm. Whereas in a retail industry, revenue is a significant risk, right? Whereas in government, it really isn't because they do not get revenue from anywhere. They are basically expenditure driven, right? So understanding what type of industry I'm dealing with is going to help me understand where am I in the audit process and how can I assess that specific risk. So you need to be able to identify the risk factors and basically understand where you are in the audit process. And in the video, I also explain how to approach the assurance side of things, which is looking at the line items and seeing what risks can be identified and all of that. And also I focus on the test of controls because many times you're going to be asked about a business process to say, okay, let's look at the internal controls. And maybe on the day they're going to ask you, what additional controls can we have? Or maybe identify internal control deficiencies. And I always have this thing of when someone asks you a problem, right? You need to come with solutions. I'm not telling you the problem for you to actually dwell on it. I'm asking you for the solution. So internal control deficiency is the same thing, right? It is what is wrong, what is correct, and what is missing. That is basically that's what you need to focus on. So you need to make sure that you are understanding where you are in the audit process. And in the video, I cover that in depth, right? So I think going back to understanding where you are in the audit process and understanding everything bit by bit and dissecting it, I think that'll be able to assist you. I don't know if I covered you, Nomfundo.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Tabby.
Pleasure. Zelia, are there any other questions?
Yes, so there's one from Sandy. So Sandy is asking, where do we find cheat sheets? I think you mentioned something about that. And then, or do we develop them ourselves? So where basically can they find them, or is it something that they have to develop themselves?
Look, APC is not a blanket approach. It's not a size one fits all, right? There's no cheat sheets for APC, really. You have to be the one that comes up with them. And my cheat sheets, I had to look at the way I think. They're structured according to how my brain operates, right? And what is going to help you is, remember, I said I performed a effective self-reflection. And when I identified where my weak areas are, that's when I drafted cheat sheet according to the way I think. For example, in an ethics task, I have a cheat sheet for ethics where I know that ethics is going to be triggered. However, the English is not always Englishing. It depletes towards the end of the day. So I know that I need to have at least a sentence or two to help me identify at least what the ethical scenario is, and also how to actually respond to it. So I would literally have the ethics template on how I'm going to introduce the matter, who I'm identifying as the culprit, how I'm going to resolve it, and the tax, well, not the tax legislation, but like the sections in the CPC and the sections in the act, the Companies Act speaks about, right? And I had to have that in detail so that I know that if I'm responding, English must not be a problem, right? I have set sentences that I need to include, and then I'm just filling in the pieces here and there, right? So I structured my templates according to where my knowledge gap was. Like, for example, I mentioned for auditing, I'll not remember all the assertions, right? I at least have to have all the assertions down, and I need to define all the assertions as well as the risks associated with them. Because if I understand the risk associated with those assertions in my file, if they say procedures, I'm able to draft according to what the definition says. So, like I mentioned, it's not a blanket approach, right? Cheat sheets according to your knowledge and what you need to know. Put something in your file that you know is going to help you. Don't put something in your file that you know you're not going to look at. I had to, for example, valuations, as a free cash flow statement, I could not draft it to save my life right from scratch. I needed to have it in my file so that I remember what goes in and what goes out. Same way with the capital budget. Sometimes you're going to forget that depreciation is not even supposed to be considered. But however, you're under so much pressure that you're going to miss that small thing, and it's going to land you in a borderline competence instead of a competent rating, right? So go back to your knowledge and your technical knowledge to see that where are the gaps, and put the gaps in the file. But whatever information you're putting in your file, please flag it so that you know it's in your file to assist you. Don't just put random things that you think are going to help you. As much as my file was thick, I made sure that I made friends with my file, right? I was besties with my file. I knew everything that was in my file from start to end. So make sure that whatever you're putting in your file, you are able to understand. I don't know if I answered you, Sandy.
You did. Thank you so much.
Zalia, are there any other questions?
No, unless I'm missing a hand. But there's nothing on the chat, so there's just a compliment saying Tavi is indeed the plug. So yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. I think we are good. So I think if there are no more questions, I think we can leave it here for now. So like you are hearing, you can go. I'll leave Tavi's YouTube channel, the link here on the chat, and then you can always go and see. Like you can see, people are saying there's a lot there. So don't be the one missing out on what is happening. But other than that, thank you so much, Ntabi. It's always a pleasure having you, and we hope you will join us again soon. So thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight, and I hope you have a lovely evening further.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.